Oh, we're live.
Okay, so I want to hear the story.
Okay, so just before we were about to go live, I was about to tell a story, and they were like, wait, save it. We're having some issues with going live, and I used to be in radio, and I was just about to go to a live break, and I was outside doing a live show, and just about to go live. It was like 3, 2, 1, and a big gust of wind came. The whole tent went ripping up. My papers went flying, and I was just stuck in the radio going, hey, it's Logan.
What I was expecting next was like your hair went all over the place.
That's how I lost my hair. It flew right up. All right. Well, we're live today again.
Listen, if you're watching right now, you should congratulate us, because I think, Alex, am I right when I'm saying this is the first time when we've actually managed to string 2 of these together on a predictable timeline?
Yes, it is.
Only
half an hour late.
Only half an hour late. Well, we had some technical issues, so I hope we don't sound too echoey or tinny, but we're here, and you're here, and I can't remember what Chelsea said I had to say anymore. What am I supposed to say right now?
Where's everybody from? Let us know where everyone's watching from.
Yeah, let us know where you're watching from, and we want to say hi.
Okay. So does that mean like what country, or whether they're in their living room, or like maybe the toilet or something, or
both?
Like, does that
Well, don't let us know if you're on the toilet.
Okay.
Most creative.
Guys, do you remember how we used to have the cover dog contest? And we kind of, sort of, still do unofficially. Do we still make that a thing, Chelsea?
Yep.
Do we? Okay. And this falls under the category of what on earth is wrong with people? Because people would submit these photos thinking that we would put it on the cover of the magazine, and it's this dog, you know, with like the red photo eyes, like sitting in front of the toilet. And it's like, what on earth makes you think that we would put that on the cover of our magazine? And like a small part of me wanted to actually just put it on for fun. Just for fun. And say, there's your dog. So welcome everybody. What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about the epidemic of leaky gut.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I actually just wrote a post about this, and because we actually just like launched gut guard, so now I got to write all this leaky gut like content and stuff, and here we are. But it's really important, I think, because an epidemic, I think, was the right word. Because we have squeaky chairs here. Yeah. Now I'm super aware of it. And the one makes farty noises when we sit down. Is it yours or is it mine?
I think it's mine.
Okay.
I'll blame it on the chair.
So we're in the boardroom today. It truly is an epidemic, and here's the thing. Here's the thing about leaky gut is that it can be arthritis, it can be allergies, it can be dementia, it can be diabetes, it can be any number of these inflammatory conditions. So we'll talk about this in a bit. Like the fact that you can't really truly diagnose leaky gut. The only thing that you can really hang your hat on is some mistakes that you might be making or might have made in the past with your dog. So we'll get back to that as well. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is what leaky gut is. And that's why we're in the boardroom, because I really kind of wanted to make pictures with this. So, and this is when we're going to do our really well-produced zoom in, I think, as we go to the whiteboard. But I want you to really understand what happens in your dog's gut. So you might have heard the expression that you hear 70%, 80%. I think it's more like 90% of your dog's immune system is in his gut. And that's because most of his antibodies, these little IgA antibodies, live in his gut and the mucous membrane there. And that's because if you think about it, So here's what the lining of your dog's gut looks like. So if this is your happy little dog, ignore my artistic skills. If this is your happy little dog, then can we see this?
There we
This
go.
is where we need to zoom.
Oh,
you know why? Alex set out all these big fat markers for me that I complained about, and then now I'm not even using them. So if this is your dog, oh look at that, so much better, Alex. You're right, these are better markers.
I put in the work, Dana.
So if this is your dog, and we'll call him Larry. If this is your dog, then when Larry eats things, and you know this, it goes down his tube, goes into his stomach. Not much happens there. The stomach is just super, super acidic, and you've heard that, right? Has a really acidic pH. And just basically the stomach contracts, and it just kind of physically mixes up your dog's food, and then a few key enzymes are released in the stomach as well. But your dog's food isn't digested in his stomach. The pop quiz. Name 2 things that are digested in the stomach, and we will give you a free jar of Gut Guard. How's that? Name, really, as far as I know, the only 2 things, well, there might be one more, that are actually digested in the stomach, and we'll give you a jar of Gut Guard. So nothing really gets digested here. This is oversimplified, it gets digested in his small intestine. So, that is where most of the enzymes are released. Bile is released from your dog's liver, and these enzymes get to work and they break proteins down into smaller chunks and fats down into smaller chunks so that they can cross through the lining of your dog's small intestine and go into his blood. And then it goes into the large intestine and out the poop chute. Now, most of your dog's bacteria, so this digestive tract, with the exception of the stomach, there's no real bacteria in the stomach because the stomach acids will kill them, right? But in your small intestine, in your dog's small intestine, there's bacteria that live there. And there's a whole bunch that live in his colon. And your dog has a symbiotic relationship with these bacteria. Bacteria are the oldest inhabitants that we know of on Earth. They're older than we are. And we've just, all of us, all animals, all people have evolved to live alongside bacteria in this very, very symbiotic relationship. So what these bacteria do for your dog is they create lactic acid, and that lactic acid helps to just kind of make an inhospitable environment for pathogenic bacteria. But they also do other things. They help your dog manufacture vitamins. So they make a lot of your dog's B vitamins and vitamin K. They produce short-chain fatty acids, which are really important to your dog because these short-chain fatty acids are largely what control the immune system. They manufacture, and we talked about this last week when we talked about glyphosate. They manufacture some of his amino acids. There's just a whole lot of good that these guys do for your dog. So that's the good news. But the bad news is they only do good for your dog as long as they stay in the small intestine. If they happen to leak out, now there's going to be problems. And not only that, it's not just bacteria that live in your dog's gut. There's viruses, there's yeast, there's parasites, and then there's toxins from his food. Now, usually this gut lining is enough to protect your dog from the environment, but here's the funny thing about the gut lining. First of all, it's got little finger-like projections. So if you look inside your dog's small intestine, can you see this? If you look inside your dog's small intestine, then there's little fingers that go into it, and these are called villi. And then on each villi, you actually have a bunch of smaller fingers called microvilli. And our small intestine, because of all of this square footage that this provides, if you were to look at the square footage of a human small intestine, it's the size of a tennis court.
Whoa.
Yeah, amazing, right? So again, so what this does is this gives a lot of real estate for nutrients to be absorbed in the small intestine, because that's the small intestine's job, is to take your dog's food and make energy and anti-inflammatory things and take nutrients from it. The thing about these little tiny microvilli, like, it's good that you get all this real estate, but what you're looking at, can we go over here? Can you see me if I go over here?
Yep.
What we're looking at is really just a single layer of cells. That's it. It is a single layer of cells called enterocytes. If this is the inside of, this would be the inside. If this is the inside of your dog's small intestine, this is his lymph and his bloodstream. And the only thing that separates the contents from inside of his gut, from his blood, and the rest of them is one tiny thin layer of cells and a mucous membrane. So there's mucus as well that protects those. That's it. So you can imagine it's pretty easy for things to go wrong. Now, I got to go over here. If your dog is healthy and there's not a whole lot of stress in his life, then these cells are closely packed together. But what happens if something causes inflammation in his small intestine? What if there's toxins? What if there's drugs? Or what if there's an overgrowth of yeast in here? What if he eats something in his food that's toxic? Even eating like carbohydrates will cause inflammation in the gut. When that happens, then these enterocytes, they get irritated. You know what happens when things are inflamed, right? They kind of swell up and they get irritated. Now, normally there's nice tight junctions in between them, and that keeps the stuff from inside the gut from getting into the dog's bloodstream. But when they become irritated, then little holes open up between them. And now the stuff that's inside your dog's gut just has free access to the rest of them.
Hence the term leaky, right?
Hence the term leaky gut. So because those cells are so small and it's such a small little lining between basically your dog, think about how thick your dog's skin is, right? Because that's what protects his insides from the outside. It all breaks down inside. Now suddenly you've got one teeny tiny little layer of cells. And that's why most of your dog's immune system has to be in his gut. Something's got to patrol this really, really crappy barrier between the outside and the inside. So if there's inflammation in that gut, you're going to get leaky gut and things are going to go wrong. What goes wrong? What happens when you have leaky gut? The biggest thing is you're going to have just chronic inflammation. But probably the first sign that you'll see in your dog is food intolerance. Not allergy, but food intolerance. Your dog's immune system recognizes foreign invaders by their proteins, okay? It's their proteins that give them away. Now, a protein is just a long chain of, wrong magic marker. A protein
I'll just get rid of that one.
A long chain of things called amino acids. That's what a protein is. It just goes on and on and on and just creates this whole big matrix like this. So proteins with all of these amino acids attached aren't digested. They don't go through the gut lining. Only individual amino acids will. But if you have leaky gut, now the whole protein can pass through. And then your dog's immune system goes, what's protein doing here? That's not supposed to be here. And so the immune system will attack that protein. Now the thing about the immune system is it has memory cells. And that's why if you get chicken pox, you only get it once. Because it says, oh yeah, chicken pox. It files all that information away into memory cells so that the next time you come across chicken pox, it can just mount an immune response and disable it before it causes any symptoms in you.
So it just learns how to deal with it and goes, remember that for later.
Yeah. Boom.
Gotcha.
I've taken care of the attack before anything happens. Okay. That's how immunity works. However, if full proteins like cross your dog's gut, it's like he's constantly... It's like you live in this world where everyone around you has chicken pox. And your immune system is constantly going, oh God, chicken pox, chicken pox, chicken pox, chicken pox. So it's just like, it's like a beehive. And the immune system is just buzzing all of the time. And if you were eating beef when this happened and the beef protein goes through, their immune system says, beef is bad. It's a foreign invader. Every time you eat beef, I'm going to mount an immune attack against beef.
Interesting.
Right? So that's how your dog builds up food intolerance when he has leaky gut. So a lot of people will say, my dog's allergic to this or allergic to that. An allergy is like a food allergy in people, like a peanut allergy. Your dog's head swells up. That is food allergy, and it's incredibly uncommon in dogs. But as you can probably guess, food intolerance is super common in dogs. Do you guys want to know how to... so if you suspect your dog has food intolerance, and it's tough to tell, because it's not like, oh, I gave my dog beef, and an hour later he had all these hives all over him. It doesn't really happen that way. It can take your dog literally days or weeks to respond sometimes to food intolerance. You just don't notice it. So it's really, really hard to figure out what food is causing it. So... if you were to do, so some of you might have done like a NutriScan test where you go to Hemopet, Dr. Jean Dodds, and you send your dog's blood out to be like analyzed for food intolerance and or saliva in some cases. And if your dog comes back and he's pretty much intolerant to a whole lot of things, you can bet the house and farm that your dog has leaky gut. But even if he's got a few intolerances, it still might be, because as we're going to find out right now, let's talk about that now, there's just a whole lot of causes of leaky gut. So let's talk about what causes that gut inflammation that can cause leaky gut in your dog. And the first and most obvious is dysbiosis, okay? So you want only the friendly bacteria, mostly the friendly bacteria, to live inside of your dog. But there's mistakes that you can make that will create an environment where unfriendlies can come in and take up camp and start to colonize. They're unfriendly because they poop out byproducts that are kind of toxic for your dog, and those byproducts, their poop, causes inflammation. So the good guys, their poop is like magic poop. It's short-chain fatty acids, and your dog goes, "Oh, I love those. Those are anti-inflammatory. I can use those to fire up the immune system, to produce IgA antibodies. Everything's great. I love that poop." But the bad guys, their poop is super toxic, and that's going to cause inflammation in your dog's gut. So dysbiosis, just that imbalance of bacteria, is one of the major causes of leaky gut. And one of the major causes of dysbiosis, of course, is antibiotics. If you give your dog antibiotics, you're just carpet bombing everything in there. The goods, the bads, the friendlies, the enemies, they all just get rid of it all. Yeah, they all just get cleaned out, more or less. And then it's kind of like anyone's guess what happens when you stop the antibiotics. And here's a pro tip. If your dog is on antibiotics, then I would give him Saccharomyces boulardii. Did we talk about this last week? It's worth mentioning.
We talked about it a bit last week. Yeah.
Alex is saying yes. But it's worth mentioning again because Saccharomyces boulardii, it is a probiotic, but it's a yeast. It's not bacteria. So it's a friendly yeast. So it's not killed by antibiotics. So it stays in there and it helps, maintain a more hospitable environment for friendly bacteria for when you're done with your dog's antibiotics. Okay, so antibiotics can cause massive this is like a massive topic we need to do in half an hour.
Breath break.
Yeah. So obviously dysbiosis is a problem. Antibiotics are going to cause dysbiosis. So will drugs and chemicals, obviously. Drugs and chemicals a lot of the time are just going to kind of crush those friendly guys. And I just don't need to say any more. If your dog has, if your dog's taken antibiotics, if he's taken drugs in the past, especially something like steroids, chances are he's got some level of leaky gut going on. Other things that can cause leaky gut are vaccines, stress. Stress is a big one that can cause gut inflammation for sure. Yeast. If yeast is allowed to grow out of control in your dog, there's going to be mega inflammation in his gut. Age. As your dog gets older, he's more susceptible to leaky gut or especially dysbiosis because just as a byproduct of aging, if you're not careful with what you feed your dog and how you manage him, then the bacteria that live in his gut will become less plentiful and less diverse. And that's not good. You want a diverse population of bacteria in there. Here's other things that can cause leaky gut. Glyphosate, Roundup. So any genetically modified food, or if you're feeding your dog oats, wheat, or legumes, if he's been eating oats or legumes, which are chickpeas, peas, beans, lentils, and I'm going to put potatoes aren't legumes, but they're also another glyphosate-laden food. So if you've been feeding your dog a food with those ingredients for a number of months or years, chances are he's got some leaky gut going on. Lectins. Lectins are another problem. Lectins are kind of like these inflammatory proteins that are also found mostly in legumes, but they're also in a lot of grains because we didn't talk about that last week. But so lectins will really start to cause inflammation in your dog's gut as well. And if your dog has a lectin sensitivity, which a lot of them do, then the small intestine will create just kind of like gluten. It just makes naturally just makes the gut more permeable without dysbiosis present. And then on that topic, gluten's a problem. If your dog has a gluten sensitivity, and just like people, I think a lot of dogs do have gluten sensitivities, then again, the small intestine is going to produce this chemical when your dog eats gluten that just goes hello and just opens up all those enterocytes, and you've got some leaky gut to deal with. Of course, gluten comes from starches. Another thing that can cause leaky gut in your dog is mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are a cancer-causing mold that are found in legumes, especially peanuts. One of the reasons why I'm so against peanut butter, right? People go, oh no, Dana, leave the peanut butter alone. Right, Chelsea? Yeah. There's 3 things we can't talk about here. I can't remember the third. But one is peanut butter, and the other one is fasting. God forbid you don't feed your dog peanut butter or let him not eat for 12 hours. Those are really hot. Aren't those hot button topics for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chelsea always says, I'm not posting those on a Friday because somebody's got to watch the kids when I post that thing.
I learned that the hard way.
And here we are talking about it.
Yeah. So next time Chelsea posts about peanut butter, just give her a break. Don't shoot the messenger. So mycotoxins are the most, what's the word for cancer causing? Carcinogenic. They're the most carcinogenic substance that appear in nature. And if you're wondering what the not natural one is, it's formaldehyde, which is in your dog's vaccines, by the way. Yay, science. So mycotoxins in your dog's food, which come from legumes and carbohydrates, grains, will cause potentially leaky gut in your dog as well. And another one is dairy. I see, and I'm starting to take screenshots of what's going on in the pack, because are you seeing?
Is that the third topic? Dairy?
It might be. We'll find out. It might be. So the thing about dairy is, just like people, a lot of dogs are lactose intolerant. And even goat milk has a lot more lactose than Dam's milk does. And then don't forget, puppies are only supposed to have milk for a little while, just like people. And then they just stop producing lactase, the enzyme that is needed to digest lactose. And so when you feed them dairy, then it's very inflammatory if they don't have lactase. And then if it's a certain, for those of you that understand A1 and A2 cows, most cows today have they produce these proteins called like casein and whey that can also cause inflammation in your dog's gut. Now, goat's milk, sheep's milk, and some cow's milk don't have that, but they all have lactose. So I'm just seeing so many dogs where people are saying, hey, just started my dog on goat's milk, and look, his allergies are worse, or he never had them before and now he does. And it's like, and I'm finding myself writing all the time. It's like, that's not surprising because most dogs are lactose intolerant. So, fermented foods are good, but I would kind of draw the line for a lot of dogs at things like yogurt and kefir and fermented milks. Go for the fermented veggies instead. It's just, for me, I think it's a better choice than the dairy. So if you're giving your dog some form of dairy, just kind of keep your eye on him, because it might be causing, if he's got skin issues or bowel issues or other issues, it might be contributing to that. Okay, so how do you know if your dog has leaky gut? If you've done any of those things with your dog, if your dog has been exposed to any of those things or eating any of those things, and he has any type of chronic illness like digestive disorders, allergies, itchy skin, joint pain, any organ pain, then you can probably guess that your dog has leaky gut. Even dementia, your dog probably has leaky gut. So what I want to talk about, just super quick to end this off. How are we doing time-wise? Are we okay? We really don't have a time limit. We're cooking? Okay. Everyone still with us? Awesome. So there's a few things that you can give your dog if you suspect he has leaky gut. But the first thing you need to do is fix all that other stuff. Fix the stuff that's causing leaky gut in the first place. So stay away from the drugs, stay away from the chemicals. Take your dog for a walk. If he's home all day alone and he's bored, boredom, I think, is probably the most stressful thing for your dog, is boredom. So tell your husband that's a reason to get another dog. And if that's not possible, a dog walker, just kind of breaking up your dog's day as much as you can, and just eliminating, some sources of stress for your dog. Limit glyphosate, lectins, gluten, mycotoxins. Those are all from starches and grains. If you can afford it, and if time-wise, you can assemble a raw diet that doesn't have grains. And that's why we recommend a raw diet, because it doesn't, not because it's raw, but because it doesn't have all that stuff in it, right? And if you're feeding kibble, do the healthy, in the comments, if you're feeding kibble, you need to do the Healthy Dog Challenge, at least the first 3 weeks of it, right? And we can post, do you ever notice how our phone does this? I feel like a bobblehead. Yeah. Do the Healthy Dog Challenge, and then we'll kind of give you some tips on how to choose a better kibble for sure. And we'll
put the link to that in the comments. At some point.
Yeah. Chelsea's like, I don't know how.
we just sprung that.
Okay. Surprise. So find the food with the least amount of carbohydrate possible. Glyphosate, and stay away from the legumes, right? And you've heard this, that people are linking grain-free diets to DCM, like heart disease in dogs, and I suspect it has to do with the glyphosate, because that kind of kills your dog's gut bacteria. And don't forget, your dog's gut bacteria are involved in manufacturing and sorting out his amino acids. If you can reduce the amount of starch, you're going to reduce the amount of glyphosate, you're going to reduce the amount of lectins, you're going to reduce the amount of gluten. And if you don't feed your dog legumes, then you're really going to reduce the amount of glyphosate, lectins, and mycotoxins. All right, so let's talk about things that you can do, because we like the supplements. We like to do things, not do things. The first thing that you should consider giving, and can you guys link to that leaky gut post, the new one?
Yep.
Because if you guys want dosages for this stuff, like how much to give your dog, then just go look in that link, and then I don't want to give you dosages or say the wrong thing because I'm live. So those are all in that post. The first thing that you should consider giving your dog is L-Glutamine. Glutamine. L just means that it's a free amino acid. Glutamine is not an essential amino acid. However, it is the most abundant non-essential amino acid in your dog's body. The thing is, if your dog is sick, if he's stressed, if he's had like an injury or surgery, then he can become deficient in glutamine. It gets released from his muscles, and now he's got like a deficiency, and that's bad for his gut, because what glutamine does is it feeds the enterocytes that line his gut lining, and it also builds a nice mucosa, right? Don't forget that you also have this mucous membrane that is an extra line of defense between the enterocytes and the inside of your dog's gut and his bloodstream. So you really want to do a good job of keeping his mucous membrane happy, and L-Glutamine will do that. And the cool thing about L-Glutamine as well is that it will balance out your dog's pH, which is good, because if your dog's pH is wrong, then the pH is very much what invites the unwanted bacteria to come in and set up camp if your dog's pH isn't right. So the first thing you want to consider is L-Glutamine. It's naturally rich in spirulina, broccoli, and asparagus, but if your dog is sick or stressed, then I would recommend like an L-Glutamine supplement. Don't just rely on food. The second thing that you can consider giving your dog is something called N-acetylglucosamine, and it's not like all your other glucosamine. It's a special glucosamine, and it actually comes from shellfish. This stuff, and it literally it's called NAG. It actually binds to your dog's gut and just seals it up. So you know how glucosamine in joints will help build healthy tissues that are more cohesive, right? It does the same thing. NAG will do that in your dog's gut. So it'll help to seal, literally, the gut. So it'll directly repair them. What else is cool about NAG is that it binds to lectins that your dog might be eating, and it stops them from binding to the mucosal barrier and the gut lining, where they cause irritation. So it'll kind of bind to them and block them before they cause irritation in your dog's gut. So NAG, N-acetylglucosamine, good.
So when you're looking like for NAG, would it say NAG, or is it normally called by the full name, N-acetyl?
The supplement has to say exactly what it is, so it will say N-acetylglucosamine. But in general, if you go to like your health food store, just say, "Hey, do you have any NAG?" And they'll go, "Oh yeah, that," and then they'll point you in the right direction. The other thing that works really, really well is licorice root. Licorice root feeds those enterocytes, and feeding them is good because if they have lots and lots of good nourishment, then it helps them to heal and grow and repair themselves. And licorice root will also protect that mucous membrane, which is a really, really important part of your dog's gut lining. But the problem with licorice root is that it contains these triterpenoids, which are quite irritating to your dog's system. So what you're going to want to look for is deglycerated licorice, or DGL, and so that's got those harmful triterpenoids stripped out of it. And then there's also actually some strains that are grown in like Italy and Turkey that are low in those triterpenoids, but just look for DGL, and then you don't have to worry about licorice root being relatively harsh on your dog's like liver and kidneys. Pre and probiotics. Now you might think that the approach to leaky gut is to load your dog up on probiotics, but it's kind of not. You don't want to give your dog a lot of probiotics while he's got leaky gut, but you do want to get some nice prebiotics into him, which are the things that they're fibers mostly that probiotics like to eat. So some of my favorite prebiotics are mushrooms. I really like those. Dandelion root, burdock root, Jerusalem artichoke is nice as a prebiotic. And then, of course, fermented foods. Here's another pro tip. A lot of us think that fermented foods are probiotic, and they're not. Technically, to be called a probiotic, the bacteria in it, and there are a lot of bacteria in fermented foods, but technically to be called a probiotic, they have to survive the trip through the gut and the intestines and actually kind of colonize there. And the bacteria in fermented foods are kind of delicate that way, so they don't, it's probably a stretch to say that fermented foods technically are probiotic, but what's good about fermented foods is that they're prebiotic, right? They've got lots and lots of prebiotics to feed the bacteria in them, and they are postbiotic. And postbiotics are like the bacteria's poop, the beneficial poop, things like butyrate and lactic acid that help make your dog's gut environment just a lot healthier and a lot more hospitable to bacteria, the friendly bacteria.
Back to the magic poop.
Back to the magic poop. And then just, one more thing that you might want to consider is aloe vera juice. Now, aloe vera is kind of toxic and irritating to your dog, but with the juice, they only take it from the inner fillet. It's so weird that they call it the fillet. The inner part of the leaf is the fillet.
So fancy.
Fancy. So what aloe vera will do is just like everything else, it helps with cell regeneration for those enterocytes, and it's anti-inflammatory, but aloe vera literally coats the digestive tract, and it'll do that. It'll last for about 48 hours, and it works fast. When your dog has digestive upset, I think a lot of us want to reach for the slippery elm, but aloe vera just works, and it works fast. So if you can get your hands on some aloe vera juice, then that might be a good thing to have in your cupboard as well. But my elbows are making it do this again. So it works super, super fast. And then you can also look at other herbs that are going to support your dog's gut and decrease inflammation in there. So slippery elm is one, marshmallow root, ginger, chamomile, even curcumin. So that was a little long talk on but what not to do, how it causes leaky gut, why you shouldn't do that stuff anymore, and how to fix leaky gut if you suspect your dog has it. Basically, if your dog has any kind of chronic inflammatory disease, he's probably got leaky gut, and it's certainly not going to hurt to give him these things and just get to work on gut health.
I mean, it seems really important. Like we called it an epidemic, and it sounds like it really, really is.
Yeah, Oh yeah, yeah. Just glyphosate and lectins alone are enough to cause a leaky gut epidemic. Yeah, for sure. And then unfortunately, you can't look inside and go, oh yeah, that gut's leaky. Oh, one more thing that you could entertain doing is a lot of people are doing like a fecal transplant, and you can do it with either poo pills or you can go see your vet and do a fecal transplant too. With really tough cases of leaky gut, that might be a good option as well. But just kind of like be careful with that as well. Just make sure, Animal Biome has a really nice product, and and there's lots of vets. I know Margot Roman in Mass. She does a lot of fecal transplants too, if you happen to live in that area. But yeah, there's something else you can do.
Interesting.
Is it? Was it literally interesting? Or
yeah.
You just saying
No, it is interesting.
It's your job.
No.
Yay! It was interesting.
It is interesting. I learn so much every week.
Do you have any questions, or before we sign off?
Before you get to questions, can you clarify that we will only be giving a prize for your pop quiz to the first person? Because the way you said it sounded like we would give a prize to everyone.
Did anyone actually get it?
I don't know.
We didn't know the answer.
Okay. 2 things that are digested in the stomach are A, aspirin. Did anybody get that? And B, alcohol.
I'm going to say nobody got that.
Nobody got that.
Ah!
So there's no winners this week.
No! Should we do another one?
Well, what if we did a surprise giveaway in the pack sometime this week?
We could do that.
Okay.
Save it.
Save it? Okay. I'm not good at waiting for things to happen. That's not my strength.
Okay, well, I have one question that came from the pack with Ruth. If you could repeat it for the camera. Is if you...
Can everybody hear Alex?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you gave your dog antibiotics a few years ago and then have done everything right since, are you able to repair the gut?
Yes, I think so. There's an element of, some research says your dog's gut will never be the same again. I think that's kind of like the pervasive attitude, certainly with vets. They think, just give them some yogurt afterward. It'll be fine, right? Sure, give them some dairy and probably a whole lot of sugar, because most yogurts are so high in sugar. And that'll fix things. No, it will make it worse. All it does is it just opens up the gateway for the bad bacteria to get in there. The microbiome, guys, is much more stable than you think. It does take a lot to shift it. Certainly antibiotics will. But, we're talking about, listen, if you feed your dog peas tomorrow, he's not going to get leaky gut from them. But if you feed him a food that has peas for 6 years, he probably is at risk for leaky gut. But the microbiome is a lot more stable than we think it is. It's very much like a fingerprint. Everybody's microbiome is different. There's these little nuances that to everyone's microbiome, and so it's more stable than we suspect, but it's not as simple as, just give him some yogurt when he's done and that'll fix everything up. You still have to be diligent and do some work after you give your dog antibiotics. I mean, let's face it, probably very few people here are watching that haven't given their dogs antibiotics at some point or another. Sometimes we give them because we feel pressured, and it's like, hands up, who here has bought antibiotics from the vet just so you don't have to argue with them, and you take them home and and you take them home and you just don't even use them. So we kind of do that as well. But sometimes antibiotics save lives. That's what they're there for. Sometimes your dog will get sick and die without antibiotics. So it's kind of nice to know that we have something in our arsenal where we can, and again, give the Saccharomyces boulardii while you're giving the antibiotics. And even like the soil-based strains like the Bacillus subtilis and they can kind of get along okay. more or less when you're giving probiotics. So I'd take a look at those guys as well. But you can give both of those while your dog is on probiotics, and then hit the rest of the stuff really hard afterward. You know, because I think this on that topic, I think a lot of people think I'm giving my dog probiotics to increase the number of bacteria in his gut, and they don't do that. It is extremely rare for probiotics to actually colonize in your dog's gut. Most lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, they hang around for like a day and then they die off. Even like the hardier spore-forming bacillus strains, right? The ones that go all the way to the colon and don't get, and are nowhere near, they're like tanks, right? They've got all this armor around them. It's true. And they can survive anything. They don't even colonize for all that long in your dog's gut, but their DNA is there, and they do like produce some of that magic poop, and it just sets up an environment that it just makes it a lot easier for the existing colonies to keep growing. Yeah, so another cool tip.
Yeah.
All right, we got anything else?
I have one from Giovanna. So she said it went back to goat's milk you mentioned, and she said we give raw goat's milk as an occasional treat when our puppy is constipated, and it really helps him. Is that okay, or should we avoid this as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, if you're giving your dog what?
Repeat the question.
Oh yeah, I didn't repeat yours. No. So the question is, puppy has sporadic diarrhea every now and again. Constipation, and they give the puppy raw goat's milk, and that frees things up. Chances are it frees things up because the puppy has maybe an intolerance. So it's causing a little bit of diarrhea. Whenever you have diarrhea, you have irritation and you have inflammation. So for me, if my dog was like constipated, I just make sure that he's got lots and lots of liquidy things to munch on, and I guess you don't munch liquid, but
to sip.
And oil is just really, really good for that as well.
Zuli is asking if her dog is sensitive to shellfish, would NAG be a bad choice?
Potentially.
Okay. So would NAG be a bad choice if your dog is sensitive to shellfish? That was the question.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's why they're here.
I have one more.
Okay, one more. Last question.
Last question.
Then we have to go and do some actual work.
Yeah. It's from Vi. So we've been giving our dog a lot of beans and peas because we home cook. Our dog doesn't like raw no matter how hard we tried. Do you have any other veggies to suggest feeding in addition to the spinach, Brussels sprouts, bell peppers? Also, do you suggest enzyme powder? We were giving sauerkraut because we thought it was probiotic. And recently diagnosed with IMTP.
Sauerkraut is okay. So the question is, feeding the dog peas and beans because they're home cooking, are there better options? And currently they're giving their dog what? The thing that stood out for me is you're feeding your dog peppers. Don't do that. Peppers are from the nightshade family, and they're quite inflammatory. Peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, they're from the nightshade family, and they can be quite irritating to your dog's gut, right? So ditch the peppers. So what can you feed? I am such a fan of berries, low sugar berries like raspberries, cranberries, blueberries especially, apples with the skins, and as long as they're organic, mind you. And here's my new favorite, and I'm actually writing a post about it right now, is broccoli sprouts. Holy moly, right? We all know that cruciferous vegetables are super good for us. And broccoli is kind of the king of the cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli sprouts especially are really, really rich in this kind of sulfur-containing phytochemical called sulforaphane, which is, they're actually they're literally looking at sulforaphane as like, hey, these could be anti-cancer pills. They're just so incredibly effective at, no, don't get me wrong, like there's no panacea for cancer, like I don't mean to make it sound that way, but they're so anti-inflammatory, which is what we're after. And the thing about broccoli sprouts, for whatever reason, is this: they have just oodles of sulforaphane and the enzyme that's needed to convert it. So broccoli sprouts are my new favorite. Super cheap and easy to grow too.
And the sprouts specifically.
Sprouts. There is sulforaphane in broccoli, but just not as much as the sprouts. And cooking, kind of, a lot of us probably have to cook broccoli for our dogs because it's sulforaphane, like those sulfur compounds that give it its, like, you ever notice, like Brussels sprouts and broccoli especially have that bitter kind of taste that a lot of people just don't dig. It's actually those sulfur compounds that cause that. So a lot of us will cook broccoli for our dog, but that tends to remove the sulforaphane content.
Makes sense.
But if you steam them for like no more than 3 minutes, then you should be okay. The broccoli should have some sulforaphane in it, but you really want the sprouts because they just contain so much more.
Gotcha.
Can you explain what mulching is?
Mulching?
Yes, or how to mulch.
So to mulch veggies?
To mulch,
you just
your
run them
broccoli.
through your blender or food processor or grinder or something like that. You just mulch them up. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. So, why you need to mulch?
No, just how to do it.
That's how you mulch. Go buy a Moulinex. Or get really good at chopping.
Yeah. A real good knife and a good cutting board.
Are we good?
Yep.
Yay!
Good, yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Join us in the pack. We'll put a link down below and to continue the conversation all the time.
Thanks for coming. See you next Thursday because we're on a roll.
Yeah. 3 in a row. 3 in a row. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon.